Back, roster the people, 32 teams in 32 days. It's the summer still, summertime edition. Today is the 7th of August. So if anything we're about to go through sounds a little weird, that would be why. So check out the wrap-up show, which is tentatively scheduled for the 31st of this month. Might be the 1st, might be the 30th. We'll update that as soon as the plan's formalized and we can get through that. But it's going to be right before draft, and we're going to update any takes that need to be updated. Neil Smith, Jason Draven, at Mike Burland. We're all here. You know who we are. If you've made it this far, you know who we are. This is your fantasy draft primer for the 2024 fantasy football season. We are going team by team, breaking down all the moves, the pops, the drops, the things that twirly bird in a circle and go nowhere. And that is what we are here to do today. As always, this is based on 12-team PPR, 16-round draft. And we are you'll hear all kinds of rankings and ADPs thrown around. Those come courtesy of Fantasy Pros. Jason and I are part of Fantasy Pros ECR, so our rankings get slushed into that. We'll reference our own individual rankings if they vary dramatically from what's going on. We'll also reference some other formats should it become relevant. And with that, I think that about covers the PSAs. How are you fine gentlemen doing this evening?
Been fine. Been enjoying the Olympics. Really upset about volleyball. The volleyball girls are out, so that makes me sad. USC had 3 players in it, and they just couldn't get it done. So just how it goes sometimes. LSU has had one girl who was pretty tiny, but had a faster first step than Jamar Chase.
All right.
How do you like that? That's a fun fact for you.
You got to bring it all the way back to football. You did it.
You're welcome.
You got there. It took a second. I was like, why are we talking about this? And we finally got there. So Becky from the block is going to be trying out for the Bengals, is what I just heard. Good. It's that kind of hard hitting analysis that people tune into the show for. Is shout out to whoever that lady is. I have no idea what your name is. I'm sure it's not Becky. So there you go. Today, as I'm sure you read and are now seeing, we are here to talk about Kansas City. And this is the usual poster child for the conversation we have around projection inflation. This is usually it. I will say there is still some projection inflation going on, but I got to say there's been some restraint that has been used this year a little bit, unlike in other years. And I've been kind of surprised. There's still some inflation going on, but it's not like other years. So it's still something to keep in mind, but it is a little more restrained for this year than in other years. This year there are other offenders for projection inflation. Green Bay, Buffalo, like these are things where it's like it's rampant. It's not even close, and this is a little. At least I could like justify some of this as we go through it. So. But it's a good team. Again, they project to be a good team. I really don't think we need to spend a lot of time on that, right? Like, expectations are what they are. They've won 2 Super Bowls. Don't know if they're going to win a 3rd Super Bowl, but good team. So, once again, it's Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. Shocking, I know. As if everyone's not sick to death of it. There it is. It's Patrick Mahomes coming back. I don't think there's a whole lot to discuss here. He opens as the QB3. He's not going to be my QB3 in my rankings. I will say that because he doesn't possess the rushing floor. That being said, he's one of the unique players that even with a suboptimal rushing floor, it's not no rushing floor. And he historically throws enough touchdowns to be sort of the exception to this rule. That's why we usually make the joke. Like, all targets are not created equal. If you got 10 targets from Patrick Mahomes, that's like 40 targets from Bo Nix. You know what I mean? Like, because the Mahomes targets go where they're supposed to go. And we don't know what those Bo Nix targets are going to be. They could be anything. They can be a boat. Like, we don't know. Could be anything. Like, it's a nightmare. But he opens as the QB3 in the rankings, translates to 29 overall, which virtually guarantees that, once again, I will not roster Patrick Mahomes in any league. His ADP is 33. So there you go. That's the high level for Mahomes this year. So if you want him, it's back end of the 3rd round pick. That's where you go.
I know. You just giving strays to Bo Nix when you easily had Carson Wentz as the backup to just go to. Like, you might as well just throw him in there.
Don't tell me
Yeah.
how to do my job. It sickens me. I'm just playing with you. I'm just playing with you. I don't know why I went to Bonix. I don't know. It could be because I live out here. It could just be that. I don't know. I don't know why I chose to do that, but I did, and I stand by it.
I know, but you had Carson. Like it's literally on the page.
I
Just,
wrote the
just
page
read
this
the
morning.
page.
I know what's on the page. I literally wrote this. Like, I know what it says. Not looking at the page that closely, to be honest with you. I could have done that. Could have done. Didn't do it. What are you?
Yeah,
What are you,
I agree
Bonix's
though.
agent?
It's an expensive price tag per usual, so he won't be on my team. And I actually do have him ranked as my QB3. So
Okay, sure. Not even
He's,
gonna argue with
I mean, even Mahomes is mortal. We saw it last year. He finished his QB 12 in points per game because when you don't run the ball, you are a little bit more reliant on guys being able to catch the ball. So,
which they
yeah,
struggled at mightily last year.
very much. I think it will be improved this year, but that's always the risk of taking non-rushing quarterbacks that high. So, but I'm not going to fight anyone that says, they have Patrick Mahomes as your QB1. Good for you, right?
Sure. My bigger issue is like third round for something like this is just way too high, and I'm just not going to get into it. But my 3 is Lamar. So for me, it's Allen, Hurts, Lamar, Richardson.
you
So
went
Mahomes,
all rushing at the top.
yeah. That's how we do.
That's fair.
That's how we do. So it's all the rushing guys, and then Mahomes is fine. So it's like, ooh, controversial. Shocking. It's not shocking. It's not shocking at all. That's what I'm saying. There's not a whole lot to discuss. What I find to be more interesting, and yes, Jason, you mentioned it. Carson Wentz is the new backup. Doesn't matter. He has no ADP. He's not being drafted. Maybe he's healthy for the first time in his entire
Just
career.
fun to know.
We'll find out. Maybe he's healthy. I don't know. Like he finally had a year to recover from the foot problem that he's been dealing with for his entire career. So maybe that's the ticket. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe a year or two with the baseball hat and not having to be Mr. Everything and play for a bad team and do everything for. Maybe that's the key. Don't really care. All it really matters is that I don't think Carson Wentz is bad enough that he'd crater out all the things you actually do care about, not Mahomes related, all the skill position guys. We will go through this. There has been some significant turnover on this team, skill position wise, and we're going to get there in a moment. So that's the other thing to keep in mind, because after the amount of just poor play they had from the pass catchers, you realistically couldn't justify running that team back. I know that's weird to say about a team that won the Super Bowl, but they didn't win the Super Bowl because of their skill position players. They won the Super Bowl despite their skill position players. It's a big difference. Like
Well, and their defense like really stepped up. Like it was super surprising there at the end how strong they came on.
Defense played very well. Defense was punching way above its weight class. So we'll see if they can do that again. Would really help if they could, if they think they're going to win another Super Bowl. So we'll go to running back. Running back is kind of what you're used to still. So it's Isaiah Pacheco. This is one of the more polarizing figures this year in fantasy. So this is one of the ones we do want to spend some time on, because you get, depending on who you talk to, there's a wide range of outcomes with this. So to set that table, he opens as the RB9, which would translate to 37 overall. His ADP is 25. And this is where we start to see the weird. That tells you really what it is. His ADP is a full round ahead of where he is in the ECR. So that's interesting. That's something to note. And it speaks to what I'm talking about, where depending on who you talk to about Isaiah Pacheco, wide range of outcomes. Jason, what do you think? Where does Pacheco come in for you?
Well, that's what I was just looking at. I had to go and look at my rankings because I thought I was high on him, but compared to this, I'm definitely low.
Compared to
I have
what?
him as
Compared to
my
the ranking or
RB20.
compared to the ADP?
Both.
Yes. Okay. So yes is the answer to that question. Okay.
I have him as my RB20.
Whoa.
So
we're a long way from home here. All right, Spider-Man. Why do you have him as the RB20?
I don't know if it's my calculations or what's going on, but yeah, I mean, I think they're set correctly. Everything looks good on my end. I honestly have no idea. Maybe I just hit him too hard with the yards per carry going too low. I mean, I gave him a good amount of carries. He's over 230, should be just fine there. He's getting 48 targets, which is a lot. I guess not really. But even at that point, it's just maybe he's being held back by touchdowns. I guess that has to be the only thing. I mean, he has 8 touchdowns,
I'm gonna
which
try to help you here.
isn't brutal, but it's still just crazy how I just have a lot of other running backs in front of him, and so that's why I was kind of surprised at why. I mean, I always go. So part of my process is I go through and look at the averages of the team and how often they've run it the past however many years, and usually 5 is what I go with. But
I'm going to try to help you here. So the ADP, now I'm doing it. In the ECR, they do projections, obviously. That's how this works in the background. So the Fantasy Pros ECR projection is 239 attempts for 1,067 yards and 9 touchdowns.
so I'm close. I just have him at not being quite as efficient of a runner.
Yeah.
That's what it really comes down to, right?
Well, he finished last season in PPR as the RB14. So they're projecting him to take the next step a little bit, but also there's some people at the top of that list that have come down. So I think that's part of the issue, but I'm not sure how we've arrived at RB20 based on that.
Did you say receptions and yards there or no?
No, this just gives the rushing. Unfortunately, they don't get into that.
Yeah.
So that would be the
total,
most logical.
I'm close to that.
Yeah. Last year he had 49 targets. He caught 44 of them for 244 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's his line from last year.
Yeah, and that's pretty much where I'm at. So I have him at 48, catching 39 for 238 yards. So
a little less than last year.
Yeah. Again, because they won't have to rely on him in that area. Like they've added more weapons that are going to take away targets. And so I think that's going to help now that they have kind of established what the wide receiver room is going to look like for the most part. So I think that hurts him, and maybe that's why I'm so low. That and I just
bottom line, you're not going to recommend Isaiah Pacheco as a back end of the second round pick, first pick of the third round. That's what that's
as an RB2, yeah, that's perfect. But RB9, no.
But that's what RB9 would be. So this has more to do with your tiers. It's got to be a function of the tiers at that point. Mike, what do you think? Where are you at here with Pacheco?
Yeah, I have a hard time taking him at that 2-3 turn, like the ADP shows, and I think that is where he's going to go. A lot of drafts, just because the Kansas City next to your name always inflates it. So ECR, I'm much more in. ADP, I'm out. I'm not convinced, and I definitely could be wrong, but I'm not convinced that he's gonna be the workhorse 3-down back. He was really not great as a pass catcher. I know he caught 44 passes or whatever it was, but I think it was just over 5 yards per reception, which is not great. That's not always on the running back necessarily, but generally those better talented receiving running backs are 7-8 yards per reception. The touchdowns are always hard to predict with Kansas City because they get pretty weird at the goal line and in the red zone. They're never just going to line it up and hand it off with Pacheco 3 times. That's not going to happen. So I think I'm out on that 2-3 turn. I like the player, obviously like the offense he's on. I just don't see a much bigger jump from what he did last year. Besides, staying healthy for the 3 games and which would obviously be big, but in points per game, I don't think it justifies to be a top 10 guy.
Yeah, he lives in that land of what I call scary. It's the whole scary portion of this year's draft where the second round is riddled with question marks. The third round is riddled with question marks. So I could make the argument both ways, which is he's on a good team and he is likely going to be the guy largely. He might not have Jonathan Taylor's status of the guy, but that's why he's not in the top 5, because there's only 5 guys that this year that really meet that criterion of being the guy unchallenged. Pacheco's close because the the next running back up is CEH, and we've seen that movie about 100 times. And if that was going to happen, it would have happened by now. That's my opinion. I'd like to see CEH on a different team potentially and see what they could do with that. But we all want things we're not going to get. And then they also added Deneric Prince, who has been getting a certain amount of love and run in camp, but this team, the expectations are too high to where I would want to draft him, and he is not being drafted. So Pacheco is the only one that actually has an ADP. The question becomes, what do you want to do in that 2-3 spot? And that is the entire crux of it, because we'll go through it here briefly. So Pacheco or Josh Jacobs, they go right next to each other.
Jacobs.
Take Jacobs.
Yeah, so would I. Pacheco or Achane? Achane goes one pick before.
Pacheco.
If you want to hit the home run and play, go for Achane. Like if you want to gamble, safer is Pacheco.
Okay. You could wait a full round and draft Rashad White. I would rather have Rashad
I'll take White
a full round later. Yes, that's where I'm at with that. Also a round later, you could have James Cook. That I'm less sold on.
Wow, James
Yeah,
Cook. Sorry, I thought
I'm less sold on the Cook a round later. That seems like a bad idea.
Still probably take Cook though.
No,
just because that price is pretty solid.
Yeah, I don't agree, especially with all the reports that he still can't hold on to the ball during camp, and he's got major ball security issues again this year. And I'm telling you right now, 2 more fumbles, you're on the pine. Period. Yeah, you're done. Sure. Done. The expectations on that team are too high. You can't keep fumbling. It was killing him last year and costing him valuable minutes. And if that continues and he still hasn't cleaned that up, you're not going to be playing in Buffalo anymore. You're going to go have a fun new job. Mining salt.
Yeah, mining salt.
Yeah, mining salt at my house.
How you always talked about Damian Harris, and you're like, oh, I like how he runs, but he's going to have a short career. I feel that way about Pacheco a little bit too. Just like
he's going to be very what I actually say is verbatim. He's going to be very talented briefly.
Yeah.
And that's literally what we saw.
Yeah.
If you're going to play like that, oh boy, are you going to be explosive. Short time, like you're going to die.
I feel that way with Pacheco a little bit. Not that you can draft with that, necessarily in your mind, but yeah, it just, man, that he runs hard for sure.
He does. And then the last one I'll give you is
the ground, man.
A round later on Pacheco, Joe Mixon. I'll tell you, I'd rather have Joe Mixon.
Yeah. Oh, Mixon.
We went through this previous show. It's ugly as hell, but Joe Mixon every year climbs into the top 12. And I would rather just deal with that. I know that there's some risk baked into what I'm saying, but I'm not totally sold on this whole super early Pacheco thing. I'm kind of more inclined to let other people deal with this problem if I could avoid it. But I get why. You're not really worried about the guys behind him. You're not worried about the team suddenly being bad. It's not like there's that many negative markers here. It's just a question of we've only really seen him. It's sort of a limited sample with Pacheco where, last year he was really carving out a role and projecting. He was on the trajectory of being the guy. So you might be rewarded for this, but what I don't love about it is that you have to pay for it as though we know that he's the guy undisputed. And if other people are willing to make that leap, let them. I'll do something else. Okay. That pretty much covers the running back room, unless anybody else has anything they want to say about Kansas City running backs.
Well, they have been saying that Deneric has been the one running behind Pacheco, and it has been CEH. So that's like the one other note that you might want to add in there, or keep an eye on, that he might be the backup, which is also terrifying because why?
It says more.
I guess it's because he's younger.
It says more about what they think of CEH. That means they think CEH is bad.
But they gave him another contract.
So that doesn't mean much. Like
I know.
it's not a big
contract, but it's still a contract.
It's not a big. It doesn't matter. It's that unless it's a big contract, it literally doesn't matter because all that means is they like him this much more than the free agent class that they could afford, and that's all that means. Unless you're going to get like
that's a team
20-something million, like you don't matter.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
That's a team saying we're trying to go for 3 Super Bowls. You know it. Yeah, we're going for 3 Super Bowls. You know
my system.
Yeah,
Here's $10. The NFL equivalent of me giving you a $20 bill.
Yeah.
Like it's not unless you get the DeAndre Swift contract and up, you don't matter. You're just a guy. You're just there. So, especially at running back. We mentioned a lot of different changes. Most of them are coming up now as we pivot into wide receiver. So I'm just going to kind of like lay this out. Rashee Rice is still on the team, and we saw some flashes last year from Rashee Rice. Finally, a Kansas City wide receiver they drafted, looking like he might actually be what they thought he could be. And then Google what happened this offseason. And I'm not going to go through it because it's too long, and we're still waiting for the legal system to work it out. But just go to Google and look that up and understand that Rashee Rice opens as the wide receiver 36 in the ECR, which translates to 72 overall. Okay. His ADP is 86. So the public clearly is aware of what's going on a little bit, but they don't seem that scared. All it did was drop him around because there is a real chance that he is not suspended this year. We don't know. Anyone who tells you that they do is either lying or they're Rashee Rice's lawyer. I don't think you're getting fantasy advice from Rashee Rice's lawyer. If you are, hit me with the Twitter handle because I want to go have chat. I got questions. Like, if you do know Rashee Rice's lawyer, hit us up join our Discord and tell us about how you know Rashee Rice's lawyer. And we would love if you could broker a meeting. That would be fabulous. Let me know. My DMs are open. Hit me up, dog. Like, so for me, I'm just going to do my piece of this really quickly because it's short. I ain't touching Rashee Rice with a 20-foot clown pole. Thoughts?
I think in a month from now, if we realize he's not going to be suspended, at least to start the year, he's still, I think his court date's like in December, but they could still suspend him or something. And he could get suspended at the end of the year. Feels like it might get pushed.
Don't suspend people until the legal proceedings have been dealt with. They learned their lesson on this years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They don't take proactive punishment until the legal system has figured itself out. Typically.
Yeah. In
situations where you do something really bad and they're like, okay, you're on the NFI list.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what I think we're discussing. Because I don't think they're going to do anything about this until the court date. So do you really what I'm asking you in a roundabout way is, do you think he winds up on the NFI list?
No, I don't.
Not this year.
Yeah.
Next year's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
It's going to be a Kamara thing. We remember his ADP dropped because we thought he was going to get suspended that year, and then he didn't until last year. So I expect the ADP to go up if he doesn't get suspended. I'm fine with Rashee Rice, especially where he's at right now. If you can get him, in this range, and I'm not too worried about the suspension. So I do think you're getting that discount again. Where's it going to be in a month? We'll see. I'm still willing to take him even if he does move up, closer to the ECR versus the ADP, which is ECR set 72 overall. So I'm still okay with it as the wide receiver 36.
Yeah, I mean he's going to be the wide receiver 1 for the team, pending any kind of suspension. So with that in mind, I mean I have him 10 spots higher than that in my rankings. So I think it's a decent price. I wish he had more of a discount. I wish people were more scared, and I'm going to guess that's probably going to creep up too. So with that in mind, I mean, as long as he stays out of the 6th round, I'm probably going to get Rashee Rice this year.
See, I don't think I will because I think there's always going to be that person that's willing to way overpay into the 6th round, 20 spots ahead of ADP, and somebody's going to do it because it says KC on the helmet. And that's what's going to happen. And I'm just not, I just don't want this headache. I don't even want to be thinking about it, especially because in that range, if you look at where his ranking would be, you're talking about guys like Terry McLaurin, who I like for a bounce back season, Christian Kirk, who I think is being severely undervalued, Chris Godwin, who I think is being yeah, people hate Christian Kirk, Jason. You weren't here for that show. They're insane. And we're not redoing the Jaguar show right now. So contain your rage. Go write angry comments on the YouTube video if you want. That would help our engagement actually. If you want to go do that, I actually completely support that. So that's why I told Mason to have his cat on. Because we got to get the cat viewer boost. Like the cat boost is like 20 people. Like it matters. But then like Chris Godwin, who I think is being undervalued, coming off a down season last year, but they're moving him back to the slot. I actually believe that when they say that, unlike a lot of people, I don't believe when they say things. I actually believe that. So because of that, and because there are other guys that I like more in the range that are more values for me, and I just know somebody's going to way overpay for Rashee Rice in your draft, if he falls to me, cool. I'll take him, but I'm not interested in this noise. And then if you wait and he goes near the ADP, okay, you got a little lucky. That's fine. I could make that argument because then you're talking about the Deontay Johnsons, Jordan Addisons of the world, where it's like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. So you're just in purgatory, where it's like we just don't know. Like, and if you go down to there, I could make that argument where it's like, sure, because then it's like all you're really worried about at that point is that he does somehow wind up on the NFI list, which probably is going to happen. But he'd have to get all the way down there. And I know what the ADP says, but I just feel like this is one of those things where the ADP is going to say that. And then every draft you're in, he goes 2 rounds ahead of his ADP for whatever reason, especially as we get closer to the season and he's not suspended. It's like I could see that being the reality of it. What's interesting is the next thing. So Rashee Rice was on the team last year. It was a big year for him. He kind of took that next step a little bit into burying Sky Moore and separating himself from the rest of the team and taking on that role. So much so that they just moved on from MVS, which good call, makes sense. And they went out and they brought in Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown has never been my cup of tea at any point in his NFL career for fantasy. Not a fan. Historically, I have been correct about this, by the way, outside of that 1 year where he blew it out and was a crazy value. Every other year, people want him to repeat that, and it just doesn't really happen. He did have an okay year last year, especially given the limitations of what he was working with on a terrible Cardinals team. But now it's real again. So Hollywood Brown opens as the wide receiver 38, which translates to ADP of 83. I'm sorry, an ECR ranking of 83. His ADP is 81. So he's currently going 5 spots ahead of Rashee Rice in ADP. And that's because he's functionally going where he's being ranked, but you're getting a 1 round discount on Rashee Rice at the moment. So that's what that's about. What do you guys think about Hollywood Brown?
I mean, he's a better version of MVS, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. So
He is
I
that.
mean,
That is fair.
You're hoping that he absorbs.
That's not exactly an advertisement.
Well, you're really hoping that he sees more targets than MVS and Justin Watson, that he ends up being the wide receiver 2 on the team. And even at that, this is a pretty big price tag for that. I mean, I understand that MVS wasn't good, but I mean, go.
Wasn't good, hasn't been good historically throughout his career. I mean, I could be even more negative about it if you really want me to.
Yeah, but it's still just really high for somebody who, I mean, what was the next one on the team? 53. Justin Watson had 53 targets last year. as the wide receiver 2 on the team outside of, Kelsey and Rice, but actually Rice being the wide receiver 1 last year. But like what you're looking, MVS had 42, Tony had 38. Like, so even if you move him up to where I have him with 82 catching.
Oh,
54.
targets.
Yeah, targets.
That's important to mention. Like,
yeah, 82 targets, 54 receptions. I mean, even then, you're really hoping that he can hit. What I think MVS was at 15, and you're reaching up to say that he can do that, and that's risky. I mean, I guess he can. He's not super old. It just seems like he's really old. Seems like he's been playing forever.
The record.
Yeah, it just seems like he's been playing forever, but I think that was just based on everywhere he seemed to have played. So it's, I mean, I can't really buy into that price because I have him way down in my rankings compared to where they have him. So, and that ADP being higher than Rashee Rice, I'd rather just get Rashee in the same round. So,
assuming that actually was to happen,
yeah,
then sure. I don't even like Rashee Rice that much, and I'll tell you, yeah, that's easy. That's a no-brainer. If I could get Rashee Rice 5 picks later, why wouldn't I? Mike, where are you at on Hollywood Brown this year?
I think I'm slightly more optimistic. I still don't love where he's going. I do think it is a tad high, but I see a path. I don't necessarily think he's just going to be MVS. I know that's kind of what we think of Marquise Brown, that he's that field stretcher, deep play. He had stretches with Arizona the last couple of years where he was a little bit more than that, and he was like, "Oh, Hollywood Brown's going to have a big year," and then either he gets hurt or Kyler gets hurt or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you look at the game log from last year, he had, I think, 3 of the first 5 weeks he had double-digit targets. So
they're Colt McCoy targets, so they're really horrible, but they are double digits.
Yeah.
There are 10 of more of them. And
yeah, well, it's Josh Dobbs. So I mean, the what was it, the Pastronaut or whatever they call him, but still not great, not Mahomes targets. I see a path for him kind of returning this value because we're talking about a quarterback that can throw 50 touchdowns and 5,000 yards. So there's going to be more than just Kelsey and a receiver. It's slightly higher than I want, but they also have like seemingly a good connection off the field. They're going to basketball games together and hanging out. So, there's always that as well. And if he can catch the ball and be trusted, you're going to have Mahomes really throwing the ball and targeting him a lot.
His official projection from Fantasy Pros is 66 receptions, 866 yards, and 7 touchdowns. How's that grab you?
Not where he's currently being projected to go. So that's not where.
Yeah, that's the projection, though. That's the projection they have assigned him. I didn't write that. So that's where I'm saying, yeah, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good here. I'm going to do my wrap up here at the end, and I'll tell you what I would actually want off this team. And so far, we haven't seen much of it. Next man up, next new face. We have another new face, Xavier Worthy, and this is where the hype train comes into play. Yeah, the hype train is is leaving the station here for Xavier Worthy. So he's a rookie, drafted by KC. A lot of expectations here. KC likes to draft their wide receivers. You know what I mean? They keep going to the well on this because one of them's going to work, right? Theoretically, maybe. I will say Xavier Worthy was fine by my estimation in my pre-draft process, but he's not my favorite prospect. You know what I mean? Like, there's some parts of his game that he needs to address. But what a better way to learn than playing with Patrick Mahomes? You know what I mean? If anybody could polish that turd up nice and shiny for you, this would be the way to do it. So Xavier Worthy opens as the wide receiver 42, which would translate to 98 overall. His ADP is 96. Does that do anything for either of you?
You won't find a bigger Xavier Worthy fan than me, and I'm still not taking him in redraft
Okay.
right here. So
Okay.
I think I don't expect a whole lot, from 2024 season, especially in the beginning of the year. Like you mentioned, this is a team trying to win, three-peat, the Super Bowl. Like they're going to go with guys they trust, and he's going to provide a very valuable aspect to that offense for sure. It's great from Mahomes, stretch the field, 4.21 speed. But I love Xavier Worthy, Dynasty. I love him, but I don't expect a big season, especially as a top 100 guy in 2024. So that should tell you kind of how I think about it, even though I am a big fan of his.
Yeah, man. It's, again, probably worth the dart throw there, but it's really not super late. It's fine. You're kind of at this point expecting or hoping, which I guess you can't really do, but for an injury ahead of him or a suspension, which I think is also potentially boosting up his ADP, maybe.
Well, he lives in this ADP world where him, Rome Odunze, and Lad McConkey all go right next to each other. And so we've arrived at like the tier 2 rookies little area of people's ADP. That's kind of where they live. So it's like, if you're interested in one of those type of guys, because obviously Neighbors and, Harrison Jr.,
Yeah.
way higher than that. But those were like the blue chip receivers. You know what I mean? But of those three guys, I could tell you right now, I'd rather have a Dunze. So it's like that's where I'm at. But even that, I think, is too expensive. I think all of this is too expensive. All of it, soup to nuts, too expensive, because you're talking about a 8th round pick. Yeah. 72. Yes. You're talking about
starter.
Yeah, that's like your first bench player. You will be starting this individual. Other players going in this neighborhood, and this is the other reason why this happens, is because you get into this weird area where DeAndre Hopkins is down in this area. Well, he wasn't, but then he got hurt. Jordan Addison's down in this area because of the looming possible suspension and his quarterback being Sam Darnold. Javonte Williams is down in this area because of all the noise around Javonte Williams. This is the area where you've got Austin Eckler is down in this area because he played like crap last season because he was hurt from the minute the season started. And now he's on a different team. So it's like, this is the area where everybody has some kind of problem or is something that you've never seen before. So they just, like, as a society, we've just lumped it all together. And that's not rankings, that's ADP. So, like, including the public, we have just, as a group, just like lump anything I don't know what it is, stick it in the 8th round. That's how this draft works. It's a really frustrating draft this year for folks who've been listening every day. This year might be like the most frustrating draft in a long time because it's hard this year to really like. There's less flag plants this year. The NFL's in a weird spot where you've got certain teams that are on the decline, certain teams that are ascending, and just a lot of weird uncertainty. So we're just going to have to see how it goes. Like, Trey Benson's also in that neighborhood. You know what I mean? Christian Watson's in this neighborhood where it's like Brock Bowers, we'll get into tomorrow, bafflingly is in this neighborhood. And as you see what my point is, like, it's either you're a veteran that has a problem that was good at one point, or you're just some rookie that we've never seen, but has some level of hype train behind you somewhere in the world. That's what this is. That's the 8th round this year. Like, Mike, we've been talking about it. The 2nd round is like big investment for something with question marks on it. The 3rd round is like a little better, a little better. 4th and 5th and 6th round, there's some real values for where I'm at. Like 4, 5, 6 is where there's some real values this year. And then you get into like the 7th and 8th round, and you're back to like, okay, like I guess I'll do that. And you don't love it when your expert, your people who've been playing this game for 20 years are like, that's not, we're not filling people with confidence. You know what I mean? That's not really what we're here for. But that is how this year works. Because like Jonathan Brooks is down in this neighborhood where it's like, is he going to be healthy? I don't know. If you're Jonathan Brooks' doctor, I'd love to talk to you. Hit me up. If you know, like, I'd love to know what you actually think about him at the moment. Like, so yeah, that's this year. Is you get to the 8th round and it's like, yeah, there's some scary, weird, and then there's more values later. So I don't know.
Yeah. So in this of these 3, are we all going to say we want Rashee Rice the most here? Because it's like the easiest.
If I could get Rashee Rice at his current ADP, yes.
Okay.
Do I think that that's going to ever happen? No.
No.
So
Well,
I'm out on all of it.
Yeah, it's like Kansas, so I know it's not going to happen ever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And then the next one on the list is Kadarius Toney, who I have been loud about since he came into the league. He was never going to be. He should never have been a first-round pick. The Giants are idiots. The Chiefs are working him out at running back, for God's sake. Like, it's not going to happen. It's not a thing. And this year, finally, I don't have to spend any time on this because he doesn't have an ADP.
I think he's
I just
hurt
wanted to
again already. by the
What's
way.
that?
I think he's hurt again already.
Yeah, he is.
so-
Oh, he's hurt today. Today he was hurt. They announced he's hurt again. So it's like, great, perfect, moving on.
Yeah.
Like, this year, I am not. If I thought I could actually get Rashee Rice at that ADP that he's currently sitting at, I'd probably do it. I'd at least think about it. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. So it's like, yeah. So, and I will say, this year is better than in other years with the projection inflation, because you'll notice how they're not talking about drafting MVS. And I'm like, oh, we're making improvements. We're actually trending the right direction as a society. And I still think a lot of this is overpriced. And then the final thing is Travis Kelce, and now we get into things that actually might matter. Travis Kelce is opening as the tight end 2, which should translate to 31 overall. He's going at 27. You want to talk about things that I'm actually willing to potentially draft? That. If I was going to get invested in this team, I'll tell you right now, I'll just do the whole show in reverse. I'm just going to be done. I would be willing to draft Patrick Mahomes, but I personally will never draft Patrick Mahomes because it goes against my philosophy. But if you wanted Patrick Mahomes at 33, I can't sit here and say that you're crazy. Travis Kelce's the same thing. I probably won't ever roster Travis Kelce at the top of the 3rd round. But if you were going to get a tight end at the top of the 3rd round, oh my God, this is overwhelmingly the one I want. Like, oh my God, because he is a difference maker at the position. He's like 1 of 2. Really, for me, he's still 1 of 1. I know he's 35. I'm aware. I'm aware that he's getting old. But those are the 2 things. And then secondarily, if I could get Isaiah Pacheco at his ranking and not his ADP, I'd be very happy with that. But that ain't never going to happen. And then same thing with Rashee Rice. If I could get Rashee Rice at his ADP and not his ranking plus, I would be okay with that too. But that's never going to happen. So we come down to 2 things that I'm like, that I personally will almost never roster. So that's my weird cryptic note to the universe, is like, I'm kind of just willing to let other people go fight over the Chiefs while I load up at value. And that way we're not paying sticker price for anything. That's kind of my note on this team this year, is like, good team. Get why there's hype still. Won the Super Bowl last year. Not super interested in it from a fantasy perspective. There's other things I like more that are less cripplingly expensive with less expectation that have similar ceilings. That's my opinion.
Sound good? Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I mean, it's hard to get away from Travis Kelce because he's clearly the target 1 on this team. So even when they went away from him, he still saw over 120 targets.
Went away from. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he had frustrating games. People were frustrated.
There were a couple, and then they went to the playoffs, and they just went right back to the well of what they like, of what they're going to do. And it's like, yeah, I get why, because you had to. Mike, what do you think in general about anything I just said, or about the Chiefs in general there?
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. If I had to choose one player, assuming Rashee Rice ADP goes up, the one guy is probably Kelce. Even though I normally don't take tight ends that high. But you're getting a value, or you're getting him at a discount, which
You are, because he was a first-round pick for how many years in a row?
God knows how long.
Yeah, like 3 years in a row, he was a first-round pick.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm getting a 2-round discount.
Because
people are scared because he's getting old.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I might shoot my shot on that.
Yep.
For a guy who doesn't play tight end, he plays wide receiver, but they list him at tight end.
He blocks.
Okay. He does block.
That
He
makes him
blocks
tight
the
end.
paparazzi from his girlfriend. Hey!
Sugar mama. Yeah. And there he goes. Well, with that in mind, thanks for watching, Chiefs fans. Everybody else,
he's just gone.
glad he can make it.
No, I put myself in the penalty box there because I made the worst joke ever. Jason, you want to talk about Gary
sure
Noah?
That's part of the bit. Or...
I'll make my other bit. You want to talk about Gary Noah? We can talk about Gary Noah.
Yeah, had some sparks last year, just not enough. So
not even close.
He's been replaced by they drafted a rookie.
We'll see.
Mike, are you familiar with the whole Gary Noah bit? Jason mispronounced Noah Gray's name
no,
one time. He mispronounced Noah Gray's name one time last year, and Steve and I have just never, ever let that stop. Like, we just keep, he called him Gary Noah once, and we just keep, now he's just Gary Noah forever. Like, it's just like, that's just how that works. Like, Noah Gray, I'm sorry. You don't really deserve that, but it's going to happen. Like, I'm not letting that bit die. We're just going to keep that going. And with that, I think we're going to call it. I think we've covered the Chiefs pretty thoroughly here. Good luck to anybody who's going to load up on Chiefs this year. Thank you for accepting your mission, and good luck. And tomorrow we're going to talk about what is like the opposite of the Kansas City Chiefs. We are going to go through the Las Vegas Raiders. So tune in tomorrow for that. But until then, keep up the nonsense.
I'm Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, and you can find all the guys at ImportantNonsense.com. Kaboom!